Jeff and Jeremy in the Morning podcast brought to you commercial free by another podcast. You've subscribed to ours, now subscribe to theirs. It's the Slow County Real Estate Podcast with Hal Swayze. When you're done with this, go listen to something that will actually enrich your life. California DRE 011111911.
All right, it's the KZOZ Takeover. Phone numbers are 805-543-3693. We'll play any song from any genre, from any band. Heck, it could be your own band. Today for a donation, we're raising money for the Tolosa Children's Dental Center. And we've got Dr. Luther with us right now, Dr. David Luther, one of the pediatric dentists. And you work in the SLO office, right?
I do. So we have two practices. We have one in Paso Robles, and we have one in SLO. Traditionally the practice in Paso has been open 5 days a week for many years, and now they've recently opened up the satellite practice in SLO 4 days a week. So that's the one that I run.
Okay, and you're bilingual. Have you always been bilingual, or did you learn Spanish as part of the job?
That's a good question, actually. Prior to being a dentist, and kind of what brought me to this region, I originally was from California, but for the last probably 15 years, I've lived in and out of the South and in Florida. And so I've only been in San Luis for about 7 months now. But prior to that, I was a winemaker. And so I went to UC Davis and graduated with a degree in viticulture and enology, and got out and worked in the wine industry, growing grapes and making wine. And so that really was the time period for me that solidified that skill set, because a lot of the people that I was working with in the vineyards and the wineries only spoke Spanish.
Oh, okay. And did you continue making wine in Florida?
Actually, it's funny. What took me to the Southeast was I got a phone call one day. I was actually living in around downtown Napa at the time, and I got a phone call from a guy in Georgia, of all places, and he owned this big hotel in the North Georgia mountains, and happened to be the speaking of music and whatnot. This, from what I heard, was the hotel where Usher had gotten married at. Of all things, right? But so attached to this large hotel had a winery. So I got recruited to go out there at one point, and never really looked back. And ended up staying there, living in Atlanta, then ended up in Florida, and went to dental school in Florida, and then I did residency there, and after that, got out and worked there.
Holy cow. So you sound like a young guy, but you've lived a full life. How old are you?
I'm 38.
So you are a young guy.
Yeah, he's pretty young. I have a lot of questions about wine. First off, since you're a dentist and you've worked in the wine industry, what's the best way to make sure you don't have those red stained teeth after you drink a bunch of red wine?
There really is no way to get around that. They say with coffee, you can drink it through a straw so that the coffee isn't necessarily touching as much of the surface area of your tooth. But, when it comes to wine, my thought would be enjoy it. And then after you've had your glass of wine, if you're really worried about it, go brush your teeth.
Use
a whitening mouth rinse afterwards.
Yes, they have these little wipes that they hand them out at the wine festival, and you're supposed to wipe the red right off your teeth. Now, Gary Eberly, I don't know if you ever heard of him. He's got a winery called Eberly Winery. He says that white wine will take out a red wine stain, and I've actually seen it done. He threw red wine on me, and then he threw white wine on me, and the white wine actually dissolved the redness right out of my white shirt. He said he used to use that to pick up girls back in the day.
That doesn't work for teeth, though, does it?
I don't know.
I've never tried that.
I've switched white after red, though, and I think it helps. I mean, some people, you see that, and you're like, oh, my gosh, man, your teeth must be really...
How much of you thinking it helps is the alcohol?
Maybe.
Probably a large component.
All All right, let's get back to what you came here to talk about today. That's been a lot of fun, though. Dr. David Luther is with us. He's one of the pediatric dentists down in San Luis Obispo at the Tolosa Children's Dental Clinic. We talk a lot about, how important it is, and we just recently talked with one of your board members about how important the mouth health is to the rest of the health of the body. But you actually get to visit with the patients, with the kids, with the parents, and what it means for them to be able to come in and have a place to where they can be seen and treated.
One of the things that's very important in pediatric dentistry is developing what we refer to as a dental home. And that's a place where a patient can come to on a recurring basis, and they can see the same faces. They can feel comfortable, and they can be treated so that their oral health stays at a stable level. What you don't want to see are people or children not being treated, and then they end up at your office and they have a mouth full of decay. So, in other words, if you can put out the fires early on, they don't get quite as big. One of the beauties about working at Tolosa is that I would say almost 100% of our patients are covered by Medi-Cal or Denti-Cal. And so every procedure that we do, unless a parent were to opt for, an aesthetic procedure, every procedure that we would do that is medically necessary is going to be covered.
Nice.
So when I go to work, one of the great things about the job that I get to do is, and it's very gratifying to get to go in and say, I really helped out today. But every kid that comes in, we treat them, and the parents essentially have no bill.
That's an incredible service that you guys are providing. What is your favorite dentist term to say in Spanish? Like, I always wanted to speak Spanish so I could be like, you ever watch the news, and the people in the news, like when they get to say something Spanish, they break into full dialect, like they attack it. What is your favorite term to attack?
So actually, this is one that I learned. So when I was in residency, my attending, his name was Dr. Larumbe, and he was an American-trained pediatric dentist, but he practiced for most of his career in Mexico. And there's something that we use in dentistry called a rubber dam. And what that is it's an isolation layer that we put over the teeth to make sure that everything stays very dry for our adhesive materials, right? Mm-hmm. And so, it's one thing to speak Spanish. It's another thing to speak Spanish in dental terms, right? And so, this was one that I learned, and it's rubber dam in Spanish is diga de goma. And if you go to almost diga de goma, and if you go to almost any Spanish speaker and you say that, they're going to look at you funny, because kind of like in English, if you walk into an OR, most people are not going to know the names of half of the instruments that are out, right? So anyhow, that would be probably my favorite dental term in Spanish.
Diga de Roma.
But Diga de Goma.
Yeah, put some stank on it, Jeff. Yeah. There you go. Well, it's been great talking to you, and we wish you the best down there in San Luis Obispo. Like you said, there's 2 offices, one in Paso. That's where it started. Then they had so much success, and great people like you, Dr. David Luther, to come on board and help out with this cause. And we're going to try to raise as much money as we can for the clinic today to keep you guys going and meet all the needs that you have in San Luis Obispo and Paso Robles. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you. We really rely on donations in order to make this happen. And so, anything that you guys can do to help is very much.
And those Diga de Gomas aren't cheap, are they?
Actually, those are pretty cheap, but some of the other stuff definitely is not.
All right. Thanks, Doc. We appreciate you. There goes Dr. David Luther. TolosaChildren'sDental.org is the website. We're raising money for those clinics today. You can request anything right now. 805-543-3693. We will play any song for you for a donation.
Jeff and Jeremy in the Morning podcast brought to you commercial free by another podcast. You've subscribed to ours, now subscribe to theirs. It's the SLO County Real Estate Podcast with Hal Swayze. When you're done with this, go listen to something that will actually enrich your life. California DRE 01111 911.